Hello and welcome back to Felony Miami. I'm your host, Joe Stone, and on today's program, we have three lovely and very intelligent ladies. Welcome to the program. I'm going to introduce you guys one by one here. To my right, Miss Loreal Arscott. Did I say that right?
That's correct.
All right. She joined the City of Miami Gardens in March of 2016. Prior to joining the city, she served as a litigation attorney in the corporate law department of a major insurance company, primarily practicing insurance defense. Ms. Arscott initially dedicated her practice to family and dependency law, first as a program attorney for the Guardian Ad Litem program, thank you very much, and then as a division chief for Florida's Department of Children and Families, Children's Legal Services. Ms. Arscott received a Bachelor's of Arts in both political science and English, while minoring in psychology in 2003. She received her Juris Doctorate from the University of Florida Levin College of Law in 2006. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Thank you for being here. Okay, directly across from me is Renee Gordon, born in Miami, Florida, and educated in the Miami-Dade County Public School System. Me too. Jeff Bezos also. He went to my high school. Go Panthers. Renee learned the importance of education from her mother, who was a public school teacher. Thank you very much. Yes. We appreciate teachers. Renee graduated from the University of Connecticut School of Law in 1992. Her talents and interests propelled her to accept the opportunity to work directly with young people in the community by managing the Miami Halfway House, a Department of Juvenile Justice residential program for troubled youth. It is from this experience that Renee developed a passion for children's issues. In addition, she has worked with as a trial attorney in the Miami-Dade Public Defender's Office for 20 plus years and managed a private law firm with a focus on criminal, civil, and probate matters. Welcome.
Oh, so good to be here today.
Awesome.
Thank you for having us.
You bet. Thank you. And to my left, Kaneesha Phelps, the famous. In these circles, here anyway. She's an associate of the Miami office of Sweet Apple's broker. Did I say that right?
Mm-hmm. And Vargas,
PL. A native of Long Island, New York, Kadisha has worked in both the Miami-Dade and Boca Raton offices, practicing law. And you graduated from the Washington and Lee School of Law.
Yes, I did.
Very impressive. That's graduated from both of those schools of law.
No, it's one school. Yeah, street law and corporate law.
Kadisha participated in the Virginia Commonwealth Clearinghouse, a legal clinic where she assisted court-appointed attorneys in defending capital cases and served as a legal intern at the New York Stock Exchange Enforcement Division. Kadisha has successfully litigated in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties, handling both plaintiff and defense side of matters, and has represented former NFL players in various complex business and investment disputes. Kadisha's primary area is in general commercial litigation.
You make me sound good, Joe.
Hey, that's what we're here to do.
That was nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to the show. Thank you guys for being here. So let me just start out by saying thank you for the work you guys do. And I know, Renee, you are running for a seat in the judicial branch.
Yes, Circuit Court Judge, Group 14.
Judge. Okay, and that's an elected position.
It certainly is. It's an elected position, and all registered voters in Miami-Dade County can vote.
Oh, that's great. Mm-hmm. See, I always think it's... I think the electorate over these last 40 years in this country has become numb and dumb because it's not that the people are dumb. It's that they've been numbed to political and judicial issues, because a lot of these people, if you ask them the statistics on an NFL player, they can tell you from their college days, from their high school days, they can tell you how many passes, how many receptions, how many. So clearly people have the capacity. It's just the level of interest. And I hope we can bring some interest, because I think it's very important that we know who the people are that we're putting in these very important positions, especially in today's climate, where it seems like the judiciary is our last and best line of defense.
Absolutely.
And it's certainly under attack. Let's add that for you.
Yes. It certainly is.
And what most people don't understand is how local politics and local judges affect them almost immediately. Because we think of Congress people and they, make the law. But what we really don't understand is how that law is practiced and applied is the judge.
Right.
And it's critical.
Yeah, we hear about the police and we hear about the
president.
Yeah, the
Right,
president. Well,
Congress, right?
we hear about the legislative branch and we hear about the policing forces, but the judiciary we don't hear enough about. So just tell me real quick, if you can, what's the difference between a judge that gets elected by the county constituents and a judge that gets appointed and then needs to be reelected?
Well, why don't I let Loreal discuss that, because
Okay.
Loreal has an awesome project called the JDI, which she chairs, and it's just
Okay.
been really adamant about judges, the appointment, and the electoral process. So let's let her talk about
All
that.
right, let's hear it, Loreal.
Thanks, Renee. So JDI, the Judicial Diversity Initiative, is an initiative. It's a collaboration of all the Black bar associations in South Florida. And of course, the aim of that organization is to make sure that we have a diverse bench and that the bench in South Florida accurately reflects the community that it serves. So to go to your question before I give you more background on JDI, there's really no difference. A judge is either appointed or elected.
Okay.
But at some point, all judges are going to face an election. So the criteria to determine whether a judge is appointed or elected really just depends on how they're trying to get on the bench to begin with. So what that means is whether they're filling a vacancy from a judge that's retired
Okay.
before their term has expired, or whether they're filling in a vacancy for a judge who's retired right before the election. So the key is when is the judge going to retire, or when is the vacancy become available, to simplify it.
So that's when the appointment occurs.
Right. So
Otherwise, you have to run in an election.
yes.
Exactly.
So the governor then appoints the judge to the bench
Right.
if the previous judge retires before that election comes. But
Okay.
regardless, all of those judges are going to face an election.
And is the election for your appointment, for your seat, November 6th as well?
No, it's
Or-
August 28th. It's
So
the
it's a
primary.
different day. Okay,
Yes.
it's a primary.
And to add to what Loreal states,
So it's August 28th.
it's August 28th,
Okay.
2018. It's the primary.
Okay.
It comes down to who makes the decision.
Right.
In an appointment, the governor makes the decision. And that can be very political depending on the governor.
Yes.
Right.
As we've seen in the state of Florida.
Right. Our state is a good example.
Although I've seen some appointments by past governors, and I'm talking 20 plus years ago, that were surprising. People that I know, and I was like, wow, that guy
happens.
Yeah.
But the person that
But
you
maybe
knew,
that's political also.
Right, the person you knew somebody. They didn't just
Maybe.
right. No,
Yeah.
100%.
Or they made a name for themselves.
so they
somewhere.
knew someone.
Right.
Someone.
And that's where the
Yeah.
politics comes
That's
in.
where the politics
But
comes
the distinguishing factor, like Renee is saying, if you're appointed by the governor makes the decision. If you're running a race, the people make the decision.
That's what I'm
Right.
Right.
And do you? I mean, I guess there's an argument both ways for that, because, as I said in the beginning, it seems that some people have become numb to this process, and they may simply vote for the person that, well, if it's Republican or Democrat that has a D next to their name, or somebody might say, oh, I'm going to vote for the woman, or I'm going to vote for the one with the last name that sounds Jewish, or I'm going to vote for,
Or Latin. Last
yeah, or
name.
Latin,
Mhm.
yeah. So
Which is very common in Dade County.
Sure, and
Right.
I'm sure that must happen all over the country.
Right.
People self-identify.
Yeah.
with the
Listen,
candidate.
I've done it before.
I said, don't we all do it? If you
Yeah.
don't know either way, you go,
Yeah.
a woman
Yeah, I'm
or
like,
a Jewish person or a
and
Latin last
usually
name.
The last 10 years or so, I'm pretty much all women down the line.
Good for you.
Yeah, because
Smart man.
here's the bottom line. I've decided that women need to be in charge of some stuff now because these old white men have not done the best job. Mm-hmm.
And the country's not all white men.
Right.
No, it
right?
isn't.
So the judges should look like the people
Right.
that they're serving.
And I think we get a little confused down here sometimes because Miami is this beautiful melting pot of cultures and from so many countries, and it's really to me it's a beautiful depiction of what America is and hopefully should be, because Miami's
Melting pot.
but it's a bubble also. But
Right.
there's because on this side of town there's super wealthy people, and 4 blocks away there's horrible
Poverty.
poverty.
Just cross the train
Yeah.
tracks.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of people don't see that poverty, but it exists for black and white here.
For sure.
And, hopefully we can do something about that.
Right.
So going forward with the judicial stuff, tell me why you think diversity is important.
Well, just like you were kind of hinting at, Miami is a beautiful melting pot. Now, regardless of whether or not we have different sects, different communities are a little bit more isolated. There were recent studies that indicated that we are more segregated now than we were in the 1950s when Brown versus the Board of Education passed. But in general, we are a melting pot and we are very unique. We're a very unique city. But unfortunately, the bench doesn't look like that.
That's true, because I try to go down to the courthouse and pay visits as part of my work for this show and see what's happening and see, because early in the show I was advised by somebody that's in the system. They're like, you should probably go down to the courthouse and hang out and see what's up.
And see for yourself.
Because, there is crime and there are people that need to be dealt with. And then there's this other issue that seems like a lot of brown people are outnumbering the amount of actual people in the system. And I always say this by the city is not the same makeup as the jails.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
And that's country, what's national. Right.
Right.
Around the country.
Around the country.
Right, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, it's
right.
not, the prisons don't have 12%, black and brown people. The numbers are much higher.
Right.
It's one of the reasons we started this show, because of those injustices. So let me just ask you this directly, Renee. Do you think because you're a black woman that would influence your position on whether the defendant standing in front of you is black or white?
Well, here's what I'm going to tell you about diversity and why it's critical and why you need different perspectives. Businesses already know that. Businesses know that in order to stay innovative, in order to stay current, they need different perspectives. And in order to get different perspectives, they need different people because it helps make good decisions. Now, how do we translate that to the bench? Well, listen, on the bench, you need different perspectives. Judges are in a bubble. They can't talk to people about their cases. So who do they talk to? One another. But if you look like me and I look like you and we come from the same backgrounds, then we get the same decision.
It's an echo chamber.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, but when you have a diverse group and you get to get different perspectives and different it makes such a difference. In addition to that, there are issues judges rule on credibility. Come on. And so when you have someone before you understand, you've experienced it, you know it, you bring your issues of credibility to the table. And I think that makes a difference. I think diversity is desperately needed because it helps us make better decisions. 2, there's the issue of fairness. So when you go to a court and nobody looks like you, what about fairness?
Yeah.
And the appearance of fairness? And
Yeah, I would like to touch on this because I think it's important for the viewers to understand this because I want to give like a broad perspective and then narrow it into why we're here. It's a very tense time in our country right now. It's a lot of racial tension. I think we all are trying to figure out what can I do in my personal life to make it better. And it's a real struggle right now in the black community, specifically, black and Latin community, specifically with black men, okay? We're lacking black men in our community because they're in prison. So what does that mean? You lack a husband, you lack a father, you lack positive role models. Yeah. And that's something that goes deep within our community that I don't think we even realize. If you really want to go deep, it goes back to slavery days as to how our family was structured. Then
How do you mean that?
Because there was no black family on a slave plantation. Okay? They moved around black men throughout the plantations for reproductive reasons. Okay. There was no respect for the black marriage. Okay? Never look at a man and say, identify, that's your wife. That woman is property of the slave master. Okay? You're not a black father. Okay? You don't discipline your son. I can take your 13-year-old son and bring him to a different plantation. You never see him again. So you go through the civil rights movement, and now here you see the same brokenness in the black community. Yeah. And I think it starts with the U.S. legal system, and that's what slavery was. It was a law, right, that you were a slave. So when you continue it now, now a lot of black men don't have black fathers. The streets raise them, right? So you have a single woman who's trying to be a mom and a dad, okay? And then when you live in certain poverty areas, who are successful? The drug dealers.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have a professor or a doctor or a music executive or a lawyer as your neighbor, okay? So naturally, we replicate what we see, okay? So the majority, when I did that work in law school with black men, most of my clients were black men on death row, and that's an awful thing, right? You're a murderer. You killed somebody, right? But then you get to know the defendant. He really had no chance. He was around murder his entire life, okay? That was survival mechanism for him, okay? So the criminal justice system is broken, period. But how do we change that? Well, let me say it changes with the relationship between the police and the community. Right.
And I mean, is the system itself broken?
Yes.
Is the system broken?
Yes. I think what it takes to get arrested.
Okay. Well, okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, on the policing side.
But that's where it starts. That's where it starts. You gotta get arrested first, right?
And I guess where some of the laws are being made also.
And the discretion that law enforcement has.
Yes.
Right.
I would agree.
So Coconut Grove, for example, the same amount of marijuana is being smoked in Coconut Grove, right?
By white people and black people. Probably more by white people.
Exactly. But who gets arrested?
The black people.
Right. So let's just start
Absolutely.
there, right? And the police officers that are roaming Coconut Grove, the black area, are not from that area. Right? They didn't grow up with these black kids. They didn't see you pay T-ball. Right? Period. So that's what you can start there. Then once you're arrested, you got to get a lawyer, okay? That's expensive.
Yes.
Okay?
Very.
So do most of the public defenders look like Renee? Not necessarily. So then that's like a disconnect.
Right.
Right?
I mean, I don't want to put down the public defender's office because I think their work they're doing is amazing.
Absolutely, but they're overworked and they're not necessarily from those communities either.
Correct.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Then your third step is that you go before a judge to make that decision.
Sure.
That judge is probably not from your community.
Right.
Don't look like you. Right. So certain things that Renee or somebody from Renee's background is going to bring to the bench naturally. Right?
Sure, yeah.
It's going to be different.
Of course.
Okay, so when she learns about this defendant has no father, mother's addicted to crack.
Right.
They've been prostituting her since she was 12.
Right.
She may give a little rehabilitation type of, as
Sure.
opposed to just punishing.
Because that's one of the problems in the system now. It seems like a lot of punishment and not enough correction or direction.
Right.
And
especially when it comes to our children. And let me just share with you, I, as a lawyer, and often in the criminal justice system, have to be the face of my client to try to educate the judge on the bench about things about my client. For example, when a judge said to my client, I'm putting you in a residential program for contempt because you did not go to school the first week of school. And when my client said, because I didn't have any clothes, the judge, look, you're wearing clothes now. That's a lie. You've lied, and she's getting ready. And I said, hold up a minute, Judge. Let me explain something to you. The first week of school is critical, and most kids want to come there impressive with new clothes on. So when my client says he didn't have any clothes, he meant he didn't have any new clothes. You know why he didn't have any new clothes? Because his mom did not receive her benefits in order to get new clothes. He was not trying to defy your order to go to school.
Right.
Give me 2 weeks. He's now getting some clothes. Give me 2 weeks and watch the difference. And she said, what? He didn't go to school because he didn't have new clothes? She didn't understand. But she did give me the opportunity to give 2 weeks. Well, what do you think happened? That client went to school.
Right.
But that client would have been in a 6-month residential program because the judge...
How old was this?
15.
Yeah.
Because the judge really didn't have the perspective.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
And she made a credibility issue, not understanding the culture.
Right.
And I think that's an important point that Renee brought up a little bit earlier. The reality is that judges are people. They bring to the bench their perspective, their experiences in life. So, as Kadisha was pointing out, certain judges may see a set of facts differently from other judges. So if we go back and look at it in a broader view, in the state of Florida, Miami, we're doing a little bit better than the rest of the state, right? Yeah. Our bench in Miami is about 50-50 men and women. So when you look at it on the gender lines, about 50-50 men and women.
That's pretty good.
It sounds great, right?
Yeah.
Like we're doing awesome compared to other places in the state.
Sure.
When you start breaking it down along racial lines, we're not doing that great.
No.
It absolutely doesn't look like the community. So that means that those judges are bringing a narrower perspective to the bench. Mm-hmm. So when we break down those figures, 50-50 men and women, what does that look like? The majority of the women are split almost equally. Well, let me rephrase that. The women are split, white women and Hispanic women, almost equally.
Yeah.
When we talk about African American women, right now there's only 3 on the bench in Miami-Dade County. 2 are in county court. 1 just recently was elevated to circuit court. Of the 2 in county court, 1 is retiring this year.
Oh, okay.
Hence the other vacancy.
Now, will that vacancy be filled with an election or an appointment?
That's an election. See, you're learning.
I listen.
If we have litigants, you talked about that numbness a little bit earlier. If we have litigants who come into court, remember, the judicial system is not just made up of criminal court, right?
Right.
It's dependency court. It's civil litigation.
Immigration.
Kadisha does civil litigation. It's immigration. So when we look at bigger picture, what are the courts for? For people to solve problems, right? Yeah. So if it's a landlord-tenant thing, if you're going through a divorce, if it's a criminal matter, ultimately you're coming to the courts to help you solve a problem.
Right.
If the judges bring a certain perspective to the bench, they may view you as a litigant in a different light because they're able to be more empathetic. Right.
Sure. I mean, yeah. That, as you
Naturally.
said, and these people, they're people.
They're people.
Yeah.
Right.
And sometimes they may have a difficult day. And the other thing that Renee brought up is that they can't discuss these things with anybody else but each other. And
like
I'm
you
sure
said,
that's
it's the
tricky
echo
because
chamber.
because that's also one of the ways that human beings, how we process things, is by
Right.
saying them out loud and hearing what they sound like.
But if you and I went to school together, went to law school together, we went to the same synagogue, we both practice complex business litigation, we are ballers who live off of Key Biscayne and Pinecrest, and we're bouncing ideas off of each other on how to deal with this broken black family. Right. How should this kid go to residential? Should I put this drug addict mother back in the house? Do we have the empathy?
I don't even know if it's empathy because
lack of exposure, a lot of it.
And I caution myself to
Something.
say that because we have a lot of great judges who are able
We do. We have
who
good-
are
yeah.
able to
and
say
I've heard that.
right.
Listen, doing this show now, I have learned a tremendous amount, and one of the things I have learned is that we have a great system. It may be broken in many areas, but our system of law,
in theory,
theoretical system,
in theory,
yes,
right,
is one of the best in the world.
Right.
And that in our state, Miami-Dade happens to be a very well functioning.
We're more progressive than others. Let's say
within
that.
Florida.
Let's
though.
say that.
Yes.
And
But when it comes to our children, I'm going to tell you, we are number 1 in direct filing
Well,
of our
that's what
children.
I wanted to jump into that. I'm glad you brought it up because I think a lot of this, and we had Carlos Martinez on the show not too long ago, the head of the public defender's office, and he's doing a lot of fabulous things. And one of the things that we agree strongly with him is that a lot of the stuff starts with the kids and starts when they're younger, and with education and exposure and opportunity, and like Kadisha said, these young kids, they're role models, or they see the guy selling drugs on the corner, and he's got the new shoes and the new clothes,
the women,
and
gold
the
chains.
car and all that stuff, and hey, that looks good to me.
Right.
Why not?
Right.
And that's all they see.
And
Really?
Instagram
and
and Facebook
particularly
doesn't
in
help.
this country, in this day and age, when everything is so material based,
Exactly.
and what you look like on the outside, and not about what's inside and the really valuable things.
Right.
And that's an unfortunate lesson that we're teaching. But I want to hear about what you guys are doing with the kids, because guardian ad litem, that's tough work. I mean, some of that's really heartbreaking work, right?
It was very difficult. So, I started my career in the dependency system, and I started as a guardian ad litem.
So tell me what that
attorney.
means, a dependency system.
So the dependency system is the area of law where children who are abused, abandoned, or neglected are then processed through that system. So when they talk about the system, you put the kids in the system, the foster care system, we're referring to the dependency system.
Okay.
So if the most common example is usually a mother who has substance abuse problems. Yeah. So if a mother comes in and she has substance abuse problems, she's tested positive for substance abuse, an abuse report is called on that child. An investigation is done. The child is removed from the mother. The first preference is to place the child with a relative. If the child is unable to be placed with the relative, then the child is placed in foster care.
Who's usually making these calls?
So
Relatives?
What do you mean? As to where the placement should be?
No, for on the mother.
That the mom's
Well,
using drugs and the kid's not being attended. Who's calling the department on those?
It depends. It could be a relative. Yeah. It could be a teacher. It could be a doctor. Sometimes mothers test positive at birth when they're giving birth to their children. Mm-hmm. And, you know, certain professionals are mandatory reporters, meaning if they see child abuse, they have to call it in, right? Okay. So once a child is removed from the home, the mother is given a set of rules that she has to comply with in order to try to get her kid back. What's interesting about that scenario, there's certain cases that are very egregious. The substance abuse may be extremely egregious. There's no food in the home. The home is dirty because the mom has a substance abuse problem and is unable to care for her children. Right. There may be a case of physical abuse. I've seen kids who had iron burns on them, broken ribs. I've seen a lot of egregious cases. Sexual abuse of children in any form or fashion is egregious, right?
Yeah. Right.
Then there are cases that are clearly cultural differences. What you may deem as discipline, someone else may deem as corporal punishment.
Right.
And that's a cultural difference, right?
Yeah.
Right. I'm not going to lie. I give my children pow-pows, right? Call the people on me if you want to. You will be returning my children back to me. I give them pow-pows, right? And, you know, what I deem as a pow-pow, you may think, oh, my God, why didn't you just put them in timeout?
Right.
Oh, my God. Yeah. So who's making these decisions?
Listen, I have kids, and they started with timeouts, and they turned into pow-pow.
It didn't work.
I tried. I mean, I wasn't abusing my kids, but you know what? Sometimes a kid needs a good swift smack of the ass.
Thank you. Pow-pow.
Like, hey,
I tried the timeout. I tried talking to you. It's not working. Okay, we digress.
No, I'm with you.
But, okay, so the folks who are making these decisions, the people who are removing kids from their homes, making decisions on the life of this family, right? Yeah. Whether the kid should be in foster care, whether the mom is going to get the kids back, they might not look like the family. So this is where the plantation system comes back in again, right? The judges may not look like the family. The attorneys may not look like the family. The psychologists may not look like the family. The doctors, all of the players involved that are treating this family may not look like them. So this is why it's ever more important for us to have a diverse bench. I started independent in the Guardian Ad Litem program where I represented the best interests of the child. Mm-hmm. That's a whole nother can of worms that legal scholars will have to get into at another time. Meaning the child never spoke for themselves. I, in my altruistic, paternalistic fashion, got to determine what was best for this child. Do you see how that's problematic as well? Yeah. And that's a system that's fueled on well-intentioned volunteers. So someone like you, my eyes and ears, you're my caseworker. Right. You come back and tell me what you think is best for this kid. And then I have to report that. Okay. I later began to work for Children and Family Services, which is DCF. Mm-hmm. So now I was with the state. I was the man. Mm-hmm. As I was the man, the people, I had more power. I got to control the fate of these black families, black and brown families, because the reality is that was the majority of the cases that came before us. Right. I was able to tell the social workers and caseworkers, that was a pow-pow. That wasn't corporal punishment. Right. We're not going down this road. So we have to then convince the judges.
Even corporal punishment is, not necessarily abuse, is it?
Well, so how the statute defines corporal punishment, if you leave a bruise, if you break the skin, if there's a broken bone, that's egregious, right? Exactly. That's abuse. Yeah. That's definitely corporal punishment.
That's abuse, yeah.
But you and I are pretty fair skinned, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to bruise, right?
No.
Is that still really corporal punishment?
Not necessarily.
Right. But by statutory definition, it is. Yes. So if we don't have someone...
And I guess that's the problem with some of these statutory definitions is they're a one-size-fits-all. And even though we're all the same, everybody is different.
Every circumstance is different.
Yes. But there's that's where your discretion comes in as a judge. Yeah. And that's why it's important for that perspective that we talked about earlier to come through.
Yeah, no, I would agree. There are certain perspectives that I see just because of my cultural upbringing.
Right.
And I happen to have grown up in a very diverse household. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of black people around when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. So to me, color wasn't a thing.
You were exposed to them very young.
Exposed to
they didn't feel that different.
That that was normal for me.
Right.
I will tell you this: as a little white boy, having your hair cornroad is incredibly painful.
As a little black girl, it was
Okay, so now I know.
It hurts. Yeah, it hurts.
My little black girl moment.
Too cute.
Now, now with the kids, here's one of the big questions, and you hear people kicking this around all the time. Those people are a product of their environment. They deserve what they get. They're da-da-da. Now, I disagree with that, of course.
strenuously.
Yeah, but I do think that education is a huge part of this whole deal.
For sure.
And I also think sometimes breaking the cycle, and as Kadisha said, in the black communities, unfortunately, a lot of the men are not there. Correct. Now, look, there's plenty of white women that don't have the men around either. This just seems to be a thing that happens sometimes.
But the statistics are way different for a white family. But it's
Yes.
more likely that white woman will find a second husband and be okay than the black single mom.
Oh, is that the
Oh,
statistics
for sure.
on that?
Oh, for
Okay.
sure.
That's interesting.
Less likely for us to get married. Less likely, just across the board.
Really?
Like, there's no race that deals with the loss of their their male leadership like the black family in the U.S. Right. You don't see it in the Asian family as much. You don't see that in the Latin family as much.
Right.
Right.
But yeah, it does that. But I see what you're saying, and I see why you take it all the way back.
You have to
as
take
far
it back.
as you did.
Right, because you got to figure out where did this happen?
Right.
Right.
So,
How did it?
so
right.
how do we break that cycle? How do we break that cycle going forward?
So that is the $1 million question, right? So we want to say they're the product of their environment. It starts with education. All they need is an opportunity. So let's focus on the last one. All they need is an opportunity. So I'm born and raised in Miami as well. I didn't get the shout out in the beginning.
Oh, sorry.
Carol City.
But all day. And, one of the things that we see, for example, in the city of Miami Gardens, the headlines that you don't see is that the city of Miami Gardens offers residents a plethora of resources. We have soccer, we have t-ball, we have swimming lessons, we have a STEM camp that's going on right now, going on right now. We just did a laptop giveaway. We do so much for the residents that is not necessarily captured in mainstream media for a variety of reasons.
I don't want to digress, but I do want to jump on something about Miami Gardens because statistically, Miami Gardens is like one of the most violent places, or has the most arrests.
I
or
want you
like
to pull
a lot
those
of walking while
statistics.
black, tickets being issued.
Pull those statistics and reevaluate it. There was a recent list that came out that names of all the violent cities in the United States and who made the top 3 from South Florida. The city of Miami, Homestead, and I forgot the other one, but it wasn't Miami Gardens.
No.
So that is the misconception that's in the media. And I think that's a show for a whole nother time, right? But the point is
I just wanted to jump on that for a second because I've been hearing that, and that also that maybe it's about the policing in that neighborhood.
So that's also not accurate, but you do help me get to my other point, though. Yeah. So the point is, the reality is that there is this perception there that there is crime in Miami Gardens. And I'm going to be honest with you, some of that perception is accurate. The level that you just quoted is inaccurate, and the statistics show that, right? That's provable data. Okay. What we can't control is the fact that, yes, last week or the week before, whatever it was, we had a terrible week in Miami Gardens. We did have 2 shootings back to back. These are facts. The city of Miami also did. Right. Hialeah also did. Is that reported? No, but these are facts. Right. So we can't control the nature
Just got a little Brooklyn there.
Yeah,
by the
it
way.
comes out like Miami meets New York. Miami meets New York.
You guys get that?
And when I was growing up,
I think
also
that's
dead.
that's what they would do. They'd be like, "Where are you from?" "I'm from Miami." "Oh, you know that?" Okay.
The sixth borough of New York.
Right. That's what they call it.
Little New York.
Right.
So the point is that because we are aware that perception exists, we want to make sure that we give our children every opportunity that we can. Idle hands are the devil's workplace, right? Yeah. So we want to make sure that community policing is that community policing is capitalized upon. Right. So our police officers go to Walmart, hang out with the residents. We have coffee with a cop at Starbucks in Miami Gardens. We were at Floor and Decor with coffee with a cop. So we have opportunities for community policing. But the idea of our mayor, Mayor Oliver Gilbert, was to make sure that we offer our residents as much experiences, our children, as much experiences, as much opportunities as we can,
Yeah.
to make sure that they can never say, you know, they were just hanging out on the bus stop and then they're watching they hustle a friend. So it goes back to that perception. So what can we do, your original question, before we got sidetracked, what can we do to help the youth? Is to do a little bit more of what Miami Gardens is already doing, ensuring that the youth have other alternatives, ensuring that the youth know their value, ensuring that the youth know their history, as Kadisha already pointed out, but also ensuring that the people who work with the youth are aware of their own implicit biases. Because go back to that system.
Yeah.
If everyone in that system does not look like the family that they're helping, they have built-in biases towards their
And
family.
when you say implicit bias, this is a word that's been being thrown around
Big
a
time
lot
nowadays,
in the media
yeah.
lately. It's like, you know, it's like how balsamic vinegar became a thing. I don't know
But
how
it's
that
so
happened.
good.
It used
It's
to
like
just
no
be vinegar.
calories.
And all of a sudden it was balsamic
But I love
vinegar.
it.
But this implicit bias, I just want to ask you guys real quick, what the hell does that actually mean?
All of us have preconceived notions about folks. And our preconceived notions may be a bias. You rattled off what you thought was a fact that I countered with statistics. And you didn't mean anything by it, but that's the information that you have received and you formed an opinion.
Well, I formed a question.
Well, question.
Yeah.
But that's basically what
I'd like to
implicit
hear
bias is.
what you think this implicit bias means, Renee.
Well, I think they come out of their own environments. And when they come and grow up in their own environments, they come with specific perspectives. And those perspectives have a bias. And they may not even be aware of it. And I think we all have them. So we're human.
Yeah.
So that's what implicit bias. The issue becomes when your bias has a detrimental effect or decision on something else.
Right.
That's the issue.
Right. Because you can have that bias, but then maybe your frontal cortex can override that and go, that's not cool. I'm not going to act that way or behave that way because that's not who I am as a person. But maybe there's some primitive brain function triggering that.
I think implicit bias has a lot to do with being an American, okay, and living in a place where we have cultures and races and socioeconomics from all over the world. I think a good example that I've dealt with in the last 5 years, 2 examples, is the Trayvon Martin case. Okay, and I'm lucky and fortunate enough to be exposed to all races.
Trayvon Martin was shot by a white Latin guy
Neighbor.
who used the
Stand Your
ground to defend. Okay,
Exactly, and I'm fortunate enough that I get to converse with all walks of life: white men, Jewish men, ghetto Dominican girl, elite black woman, and this was a heavy conversation. And the number one question I like to ask everybody is, do you feel different if Trayvon was a Korean kid?
Right.
And nobody, most of my white friends or non-black friends says, absolutely. They feel bad about it. They feel bad. But if a little Korean boy is walking down your block with some Skittles, does he intimidate you? Mm-mm. Do you know what I mean? Right.
Yeah.
Right. As opposed to...
I do know what you mean.
Do you know what I mean? And then even
totally
the most
get it.
liberal, open-minded white person has to stop and go, ooh,
Okay,
I do feel different because Asian culture is now looked at as intimidating, aggressive. They're the smart kids. He must have a laptop in his book bag where the
Right.
black kid must have a gun, right? Yeah. Same thing when I talk about this police relationship with black men. A 6'4" or 6'2" dark-skinned man with dreads doesn't intimidate me. That could be my cousin.
Right.
So I don't automatically think something about a very dark-skinned man with sneakers, dirty jeans, and dreads. I think he may be a mechanic coming from work.
Right.
Where my good elite white friend, when she sees that guy, she
may
has her
question
implicit bias that he's aggressive. Do you understand what I'm saying? Same thing with Muslims. You know, when you see a group of women with their hair covered, what does that make you feel like as an American? Right, and you got to own it. It's because of what we see and what we've been exposed to. So certain things like smart intelligence comes with Asians. Aggressive criminal comes with black male skin. Aggressive comes with black women. Yeah. Nice, gentle, protect the white woman. Smart leadership comes with white men. Just naturally as the way the history of our culture was structured.
Yeah, and I mean those ideas have been forced and presented to us
in media,
television
exposure,
programming.
right.
Sure, I mean, books, everything.
Everything.
We've
It's
been
been-
indoctrinated.
Yes,
to
it's
accept
been
it as
indoctrinated.
reality.
Because I always think about this thing that the implicit bias maybe is truly an American thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Europeans have some of it too, but not as much as other countries. Because you take China for example. You know,
Everybody's
everybody's
Chinese. Right, it's very different,
It's
right.
not going to
No,
be.
I think it's everywhere though, because in the sense they're
and I'm
more.
sure there must be levels of it because there must be certain villages in China that they look a little different. And
They
that
may
guy's
be-
like, oh,
break
that
it
guy's
down.
from Xing
Exactly.
Wang.
Right, we
He's a-
all,
you know,
I think, do
Exactly.
it, but the way America was structured, that is everybody, and then the way you can move social economic wise is different, right? You don't automatically think Asian, Latin, and Black is necessarily poor in America. Not necessarily, right? Because some
Right.
of these cultures have advanced, right?
Absolutely.
Where like in China, I know because I visited China, when you have darker skin in China, they think you're a worker.
Right.
Because you've been outside in the sun more, so then you're socially lower. So every country does it,
Right.
but you have way different races,
It's-
right?
yeah, yeah.
So I have my stereotypes about Europeans, right? About African immigrants, about Haitian immigrants, because of what I've been exposed to. But I'm different because I'm a Black woman. So there's certain things that I know that perpetuates in my race I don't also have. Right? Like, for example, my Asian friends laugh that they think that all Asians are so smart and study all the time. They're like, well, we're not. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
in classes, they just want to ask the Asian kid or the Indian kid because we know you know. No. Do you know what I mean? So it can help, good and bad of it. But I think during this Trump administration, a lot of racial issues have been put on the forefront that we're talking about implicit bias a little bit more.
I wasn't gonna
Right.
go there because I don't mention the president's name really on this show ever. But
Okay.
something just came up, and since I have three very intelligent women here that are involved in the judicial part of our government, Justice Kennedy just announced he's retiring. I think a lot of people were like, because this cat has always been like the kind of
Swing vote.
vote to the more progressive liberal side of things, which throughout history always end up prevailing. Even when stifled by the more conservative groups, the progressive and liberal ideas eventually do make it through in the end. This is historically proven. There's some data to back that up. So we go through these little things every day. And I was just telling my wife this the other day. She's an immigrant. She's here from another country. I said, it's interesting. We're in such a weird state right now. I said, and when I stop and think, I said it was just 50 years ago that everything was segregated here.
Yes.
Black
That's
and
not
white
that
people.
long ago.
It's
right.
not that long
And that's
ago.
I think that we forget.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's just not so long ago.
Right.
And all of a sudden people are so high and mighty about this and that. But the reality is we've got some growing to do.
We still got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of wounds that need to be healed.
Yes.
And there's a lot of bridges that need to be crossed.
Yeah.
But
I want to. I know you're going somewhere, but I'm going to stop you. I
Go.
want to hear your thoughts on this Kennedy retiring thing and what the hell's going to happen.
As a judge running for the canons prohibit me
can't comment.
to comment because they say, oh, you've already formed an opinion, you're not unbiased, and when you get on the bench, you already come.
Right.
So the canons
You're not allowed to say
I
anything.
can.
prohibit me.
Okay, I know
We'll speak for
Kadisha
you,
has something to
Renee.
say
Yeah,
about
Kadisha
it.
has
we'll speak for you.
Right.
Go ahead, Lori.
And again, I mean,
Then I want to talk about something else.
Yeah, I want
Yes.
to, again, educate the public on this because I don't think I knew this until law school. The power of the United States Supreme Court.
Right.
Okay, so and I remember elementary school, like, learning about government, that United States was built off of checks and balances, right? To try to avoid that kingdom atmosphere that was happening in Europe. But one branch of our government that cannot be checked is the U.S. Supreme Court. They are the final decision maker,
Yes.
right? And their appointment is lifetime appointment. So when you learn that, you realize how important their seat is.
Yes.
And I remember in law school, constitutional law is a big deal. We all take it. And I remember thinking, like, when are we ever going to really use this? Because at that time, I thought we were so progressive. Like, when is abortion going to come back up? Or, do you know what I mean? Voting rights. Like, woo. Like,
We're past
we're
all
way
that.
past
We're way
that.
past
That was
that.
50 years ago.
Right. Or how do we impeach a president? You know, no. Like, how does all that?
Difficult.
Very. But when is this going to come up in my lifetime? Like, this is all founded. And this era that we live in now makes you check the Constitution and things that we thought were established law, like Roe versus Wade.
Right.
I mean, and to me, it's baffling that this is going to be, it's going to come back up. It's going to, gay marriage, gay rights, transgender in the military, those issues that we thought we had put to bed and we
they're
progressed, no. They're coming back up.
Yeah, but even though the Supreme Court already ruled on gay marriage, even though the Supreme Court it can come back up.
Yeah.
So what the states can do now is attempt to pass
Their own.
laws that are encroaching on those previous
The
rulings.
federal laws.
Exactly. The states can now say, oh, okay, well, Roe v. Wade, let's see how far we could push this to put
Texas
more
has been
limits.
pushing the hell out of it.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So now is the prime time for them to push it even further and someone to bring a case to challenge that for it to go up to the Supreme Court.
Exactly.
Now that becomes new law. If the
Exactly.
court decides to take that on and decides to change
Which
their
is
stance.
crazy because countries like Ireland and Argentina, who have had abortion be illegal forever, just passed.
Of course. Right.
No, this is wrong.
Right. Right.
You know, and as a man, I don't feel I have any position on this conversation because I don't have the ability to ever
Exactly.
be pregnant, and I think
Right.
it's really a woman's conversation. And
Right.
I always tell people that are against it, I'm like, so don't have an abortion.
Right.
You don't believe in it, don't
what
do
I
it.
say is make sure that you are promoting and funding public education,
Right.
public health care,
Yeah.
and you're anti the death penalty. Because all of that is a big contradiction.
Of course.
That we want you to have the baby for religious reasons, but when a baby gets here, I want to give them public
Well,
school.
that's a huge-
I don't want to give them health care. And if they become
Right.
a criminal, which the majority of them, you
Right.
know, because if you look at when
we
abortion,
wanna kill 'em.
right,
Right.
we're going to kill them
That's crazy.
because this
Yeah.
eye for an eye, to, you know. And
Yeah.
one thing I learned in law school was that once abortion was legal, the amount of crime decreased. Because these women are trying to tell you, I can't afford to have this baby.
Right.
This baby is doomed. Believe her when she says that. Like, if
Yeah.
she feels that way, don't question her. Because then when that baby comes out, who are these kids becoming?
Yes.
And then we're so anti-crime, but make sure you have the baby.
No, it's a
Right.
very
And we know what kind of justice our president is going to appoint. It's going to be a conservative justice, and we're going to have to deal with that for a lifetime.
A
That's the
lifetime,
point
yeah.
that is concerning. So all the progress that you said that, you know, we were making, 50 years was really just yesterday.
Yeah.
Right. And we are in a fragile state because our nation is still divided over those same issues that plagued us 50 years ago. I think that's the climate that we're seeing right now. So if we get a conservative justice
Which we will.
appointed, which we will, everyone should be very concerned about which way the court is going to lean. The immigration laws,
Healthcare.
the healthcare laws, the abortion
No, and
laws.
these decisions, they affect. We can see clearly they affect generations. They affect generations.
And, you know, keep in mind, like Kadisha said, the Supreme Court is supposed to be the final checks and balances.
Final.
So even though the court, ultimately the progressives have prevailed, look how long it took, though.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a slow changing wheel. But if the court is supposed to be the ultimate purveyor of truth,
Yeah,
right?
Supreme Court.
What's going to happen when we have another conservative on there?
Yeah. I'm not going to ask you, Renee.
Yeah, no,
You're
'cause
not allowed to answer.
I'm not
but-
allowed to answer. I wanted to really just talk about one of the things because I
Yes.
don't want anyone to think that I'm running for judge and because of the issue for diversity that I'm an African American female, that's why I should be on the bench.
Sure.
I want to make it very clear that I'm totally qualified
Of course.
to be on the bench,
Yeah.
meaning I have tried more than 150 cases. I train attorneys in Miami-Dade County. I have done CLE courses for attorneys in Miami-Dade County. I travel all over Miami-Dade County lecturing on legal strategies and education. I'm well known in the courts
Sure.
for my qualities. But I do.
And I'm glad you brought those things up. I think it's important that anybody that hears this knows that.
Yes.
And
Because that's a criticism at times that are these people qualified when you talk about diversity?
sure, of course. Or is she just getting the job because
she's
she's
a black woman or
Yeah,
a woman
yeah.
or she's a Latin
Right.
or that comes up. Right.
And I wanted to make that clear, not only about my qualifications, but about my commitment and service to this community and talking about our kids. You raised a question. You said, what do we do about these kids? First of all, I just want to tell people, sometimes kids do stupid kid stuff. Because they are kids.
The public defender's words, exactly. He said, sometimes kids just do stupid kid stuff, and they got to be given a break because it's just, especially young men, they have a lot of energy, and they sometimes do stupid stuff. Listen, I did it too.
We all did.
And I was able to, my parents had some money, and they were able to get me a lawyer, and, I didn't get any charges. But did stupid things.
Exactly. And yet Florida is number one in direct filing kids to the adult system. That means transferring children ages 14 on up to the adult criminal system. Most people think for violence things, but for non-violent.
Really?
Yes. With no due process.
Why is that? How can that be?
That's because the state has been given ultimate authority to direct file. No review.
To direct file.
And direct file means transferring a juvenile to the adult system with no overview.
Because they say, this crime was so heinous, he should be tried as an adult.
No,
that's
not at all.
But that's what you
that's
hear.
That's what you hear. Yeah. But that is not what's happening. As a matter of fact, in Miami-Dade County, most kids are announced an intent to direct file for nonviolent offenses.
Wow.
Yes.
Like what?
Like, let's call it, in my case, a burglary to a golf cart. He went and he took a golf cart.
Oh, come on. We all did
Or some kids were hanging out at an abandoned building, and they were listening to music and talking. But the abandoned building was a house, and when you walk into the house through the gates, that's a burglary of an unoccupied dwelling or structure.
Like trespassing.
Or you break into somebody's shed. Or you joyride.
Yeah.
And that's a grand theft because the car was stolen, but you didn't know it. You got in the car with someone, they said you knew or should have known. That's a grand theft. Kids are being announced an intent to direct file to the adult system for that. But what is so egregious is the lack of due process, meaning the attorney does not get to talk to the witnesses, does not get to do a deposition, does not get to get police reports or bolos, nothing. A kid has two choices. Either you plead guilty, go to a 9 to 18-month program to keep it in juvenile, or you get direct filed to the adult system.
Now, why are they doing that? Are any of these facilities private facilities? I'm curious because that seems to be like one of the things. There's a system set up in other states. You hear that and they actually have contracts that require them to keep their prisons 90% full. So how does that contract work? That means you have to have people being put in jail.
Yeah. You need customers.
Yeah.
Right. And
that's how you make a profit.
That's a sick system that we have. Yeah.
This whole private prison system is, I don't get it, and I think it's awful. I think it's unconstitutional and un-American.
And for our kids who in prison won't get, if they go to a program, at least they'll get education. They have to be mandated education. At least they may get mental health services. It's rehabilitative.
Yeah.
But to send them to prison where there's not rehabilitative.
Yeah.
It's strictly punishment only.
So
are you saying kids don't get a second chance if they make a mistake? It's punishment and that's it?
So
they're not redeemable?
Who's making these decisions to send these 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds to prison? Who's making that decision? Is it an elected official?
No, it's the state attorney. The state attorney, the legislation gives the state attorney the unfettered power to make the decision. One person, not a judge, the state attorney, the power to make the decision to not direct file or not. A judge does not even get involved.
Yeah, but so how does one person deal with a whole state worth of juvenile things that, I can barely delete my emails in a day to, you know what I'm saying?
That's a lot of power sheet, right?
That's an awful lot of power.
One person in Miami-Dade County is one state attorney.
Well, Renee means the assistant state attorneys that are on the ground. So Just
Right.
like the public defender is a different
that office.
assistant. Right.
The
yeah.
office,
But
right.
Yeah.
the state attorney is an elected official.
Yes.
We should be mindful. Just like the public defender you met, Carlos Martinez,
Yes.
is an elected official.
Right.
So if her policy, the state attorney's policy, which we won't call by name, but if her
You can call her
policy,
by name.
everybody
Trying to
knows
get
her,
her on the
right?
show.
Everybody knows her. Kathy, you heard that? He's
Yeah.
trying to get you on the show.
I
We'll
am.
see her in a couple of hours. We'll tell her you said
Yeah, we'll
so.
see her soon.
Yeah?
Oh
see her
no,
tonight.
no
Okay,
joke.
good.
We'll see her in a couple.
Trying to get her on the show.
We'll let her know. So if Kathy's policy is to
I'd like
handle
to.
the cases
Supposedly,
like
she
that,
has a lot of good programs going on. Also,
she does.
And
She
I-
does a lot of
yeah.
community
She does.
outreach,
Yeah.
and she does
And
a
I'd
lot
like
of
to hear about
workshops
those.
on
And I have some questions
expungement.
for her too. So see if you can get her in here for us.
Oh, we got you.
I'll do a one-on-one.
She would.
You heard that, right?
But if that's her mandate, then her troops on the ground
Right.
are executing. So that's something else that the voters should be aware of.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go back a minute.
And let me just say this,
Okay.
Kathy may tell you that the direct file in Miami-Dade County is going down. The numbers are going down, but what they don't tell you is the announced and intent to direct file, where literally you're saying, I'm going to take a plea in order not to go to
Right.
Which is
Yeah.
that long.
So there's
is
the
going
pleas.
up.
Way up. Well, yeah.
Way.
Yeah. And we've had programs about pleas and how that works, and it's
It's another. That's a separate episode that you
yeah,
did.
it is. Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's a fascinating area of
no
the system.
discovery.
Right.
Yeah.
No discovery.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah, and then the penalties that you face if you actually do go to trial, the trial tax,
Right.
Right.
which is crazy.
It's crazy.
So we wanted to touch on the voter awareness piece.
Yeah.
So just like, your question was, who makes that decision? Well, the state attorney is an elected position.
Right.
The public defender is an elected position. Judges are elected. Your local policymakers are elected. The county commissioners, the school board directors. So I think the constituents really need to understand that at every level, whether there's concerns about the policy that's being written, the laws that are being written, or how the laws are being enforced, we have the power to control that. We vote for these people who make the laws and enforce the laws.
Absolutely. And if you don't know what a constituent is, that's you if you vote and you live here.
Exactly.
You are
The
a
constituent.
constituent.
You're even if you don't vote, you're still
You're
a
still a
constituent.
constituent,
right?
Because
Still
all the
affected.
decisions
But you
that
should
are
vote.
made, you
Right.
exactly. You should be registered to vote.
Yeah.
You should get out and vote, and you should
Yes.
have your voice be heard. If you have any complaints, the minimum wage isn't right, your rent is too high,
Right.
your neighbors are getting on your nerves, whatever it is,
Yeah.
whatever concerns that you have, those are all regulated by a law that was created by somebody and that someone has to enforce.
Right.
The beautiful thing about this democracy is that everyone can have their voice be heard.
Yeah.
You talked about numbness in the beginning, and I keep trying to get back to that. The last 50 years, we've been disenfranchised. We were empowered at first when we had the civil rights movement. And then at some point, we just got complacent because we thought everything was great and we were in this kumbaya moment. Then when we began to realize that there was still some work to be done and folks attempted to tackle those issues, they became disenfranchised and disheartened. They didn't understand the gravity of their power.
Yeah, it's an uphill battle.
But you have to keep chugging up that hill
Yeah.
and make your voice be heard. That's the only way to effectuate change.
Yeah, I mean, I think also, I always say this on this program many times, that I don't know when or where it happened, but it seems like somewhere 40, 50 years ago, schools, somehow there was a decision made to stop teaching civics and not to not have our electorate, or our people in our community be educated on how this system works.
Right.
And how the branches of government
Right.
work in their everyday life. Because, again, people get so caught up in what new sneakers they're going to have or what car they're driving or what, so-and-so has. Now it's a whole different world with the social
Instagram,
media. it's-
Facebook.
Twitter.
It's a whole nother world
Yes.
that didn't exist 10 years ago.
Exactly.
And the restoration of rights, too. We're talking about people having rights, but that's going to be critical. And that's going to be on this ballot. The restorations of rights of people who
A
rights were-
few former felons, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's a
we did a
big deal.
program on that also,
Right.
and yeah, that's
Good.
And I'm glad that's coming up for a vote, and I really hope people get out and vote for that because look, sometimes you do stupid stuff, and some of these women have gone and paid their debt. Now it's like, okay, I've paid my debt. Let me get back in the game.
Yeah.
And the thing that I hear on this program a lot that I see also in the courts is people seem to think, and I just like your guys' opinion on this, that people commit a crime and they go and they get arrested and they go to jail, and that's shame on you. But there's a lot of people that commit crimes again and again and again and again, and they just end up going in and out of the court system, and maybe they'll go to jail for a short time, but they're in and out, and then all of a sudden you get the one person that does one little thing, and then they get life in prison. That's where that imbalance to me comes in, and that injustice comes in, because why is that? Why is the system allowing that to occur? People coming, in and out, and I've had police officers on this show saying, "Yeah, I arrested that guy 6 times." And he's in and out, in and out.
But, did you ask what did he arrest the guy for 6 times? I mean, sometimes he's arresting him 6 times for having an open container of beer.
Right.
So you arrest him for that. He spends 2 or 3 days in jail because he can't make a bond for having an open container of beer, and you keep arresting him for that.
Right.
So what is it that he's keep arresting him for?
I agree.
It depends. And I think that, there are sentencing guidelines that we have, that judges have, that allows for some discretion, some not. Mandatory sentencing does not. But
so you're talking about minimum mandatories, which are part of the law. Now, do judges have any discretion on those?
On those, no.
No.
No discretion on minimum mandatories.
Really?
None.
That's a legislative decision.
That is
and
correct.
Are those federal guidelines or state guidelines?
State guidelines.
They are.
Yes. But in terms of policing and, you talk about people coming in and out of the system. When I think about children, though, I think about what can we do to keep kids from coming into the system. And part of the question becomes to our mindset. And it's our mindset of, am I here just to look at what this kid did? Oh, he joyrided in a car. That's a trespass. If he didn't know, let me deal with that. Or should we be asking ourselves, why are these kids here? And then doing things, evaluations, trying to find programs. I mean, I was on the initiation of a pilot project for the Department of Juvenile Justice to create standards and programs for our kids in South Florida to ensure that we have a good system for our kids. But we need an expert on the juvenile bench, somebody who understands ACE factors, somebody who understands why the people keep coming into the system.
Right.
Because that's the question that you're asking. You keep arresting me for a thing. If I'm only addressing the actual thing that you were arrested for, and for kids, not why you are arrested or not why you're here.
Right. I agree. The why of it. Yeah. The what's going on in the whole system that's causing this reaction,
The
this
holistic
constant
approach.
reaction.
And I think we have to change what a stereotypical criminal looks like. Okay? Because I think, to your point, who gets arrested, who has private attorneys, and who doesn't, as to why somebody is doing time and why somebody can do the same things over and over again and not do time.
Right.
You follow what I'm saying?
Totally.
Because if certain cops are in certain neighborhoods, and to Renee's point, and are continue to arrest certain things, you see what happens.
Yeah.
Where, their example, I've heard cops that when you see in a wealthy neighborhood and you pull over a kid who's drinking, these cops are like bringing them home. Do you know what I mean? Like, instead of saying DUI, your life is damn near over, it's going to cost you 10 grand. It's, ooh, we don't want you to endanger yourself, so we're going to bring you home. Or they don't make as much arrest in certain neighborhoods. And then when it happens to somebody like you, Joe, your parents are on it.
Yeah.
Oh, no, they realize what it would have meant for you to have a criminal record.
Right.
Right? Where mother of 5 was doing it by herself. What am I to do? And then private attorney versus public defender. All that stuff. So I don't think it's a black and
And
white.
not every crime gets a public defender.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Right.
the problem.
That's
Yeah.
another, right.
So I mean, listen, it's overwhelming to walk into a courthouse and walk through those halls just as a spectator.
Right.
I have been there on both sides as as somebody that had to show up for an arraignment and somebody who showed up because, hey, that guy owes me some money. But either way, it's
Intimidating.
It's super intimidating.
Oh, yeah,
It's
yeah.
overwhelming.
It
I
is,
cannot
yeah.
imagine being a 15, 16, 18,
Right.
19-year-old kid
Right.
and being alone
Right.
in
Right.
that system.
Right.
It's terrifying.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And Kadisha, to your point, it's not only just who the cops arrest, but it's also who the state chooses to prosecute.
That's another thing,
And,
right?
So that whether it gets
Yes.
into
That's the second
system or
step,
not.
right?
Right.
And that's why I do believe we need diversity in the state attorney's office as well. It goes across boards
What's the
because
state attorney's office look like?
It's funny that you all got really quiet. I think that the diversity in the state attorney's office is definitely a must, but I think it's training from the top down, right? Like you spoke to Carlos Martinez. He has a very progressive overview. I've spoken to him plenty of times.
Yeah.
I understand his stance on the issues. The difference is at places like the state attorney's office, more so I think than the public defender's office, and I think Renee could correct me if I'm wrong, you have fresh-faced attorneys who are trying to get litigation experience.
Right.
They don't have the life experience to understand that they need to treat these cases holistically.
Right.
They don't have the life experience to understand that they need to look at the causes of why this person continuously gets arrested.
Right.
So I think if that mindset was addressed from the top down, then it would be
It's an interesting
more
thing that
progressive.
you say it like that. I mean, because we've heard those conversations, but it's an interesting way that you put it in saying these young prosecuting attorneys are trying to get experience
prosecutorial
in
experience
the courtroom.
And how do you get that? You try cases.
You try cases, yeah.
right.
And if that's how
Right.
you build your cred and your rep, they
Right.
have no intention of well,
Sure,
not
and who
no
doesn't want to
intentions,
win?
but
And
exactly.
for them,
course.
winning is
and they're
is-
humans too,
everything.
right? These
Yeah.
prosecutors are humans,
Yeah, they're
right?
human beings,
But I do
yeah.
think we can do better in mending the relationship between the state attorney's office and the community.
Yeah, I mean, because they represent the community. I
Right,
mean,
they're
that's
supposed
their
to
job.
the
Yeah.
state,
Yeah.
right? But similar to the
Yeah,
cops,
yeah.
if they don't know the community and they're not connected to community,
Yeah.
because I know fine state attorneys
Sure.
that they understand as black women, black men, Latin women, their importance there.
Sure,
That
and
they
we've
can relate
had
to that
them on the-
defendant and
yeah.
say, you know, we're not going to charge him with X, Y, and
Sure.
Z, as opposed to those that Loreal's coming to that just want the litigation experience.
That's yeah, and
Do you know? And it's different.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I get that. I think it's I think it's important that more people in the community that aren't charged with crimes somehow familiarize themselves with these people and these
Right.
positions, because it is a big part of our community and how our community functions.
Right.
And the state and then the country, the same, where it used to be back in the day where Miami radio went, the rest of the country followed.
Exactly.
That's
right.
the truth.
Right.
So,
right.
hopefully, we can do similar things. We're about out of time, and we have a thing that we like to do here at Felony Miami at the end of the program. And that is, I like to ask our guests what they're listening to musically. Who's on their playlist, who they're listening to. It could be new, it could be old. It doesn't make a difference. I just want to know the truth. Who have you got on your playlist this week?
Okay, so it depends. My playlist is very diverse.
He's saying this week.
This-
Today's
this
Thursday.
week.
What were you playing this week? On the
week,
spot.
Uh-huh.
Right.
I've been Trick Daddy, Drake, Mary Mary.
She had me nervous. I thought she was going to say ABBA or something for a minute. I was like, oh, damn, girl. No. Okay.
Tamala Man. So
Okay.
I range from gospel to trap music.
Nice.
It just depends on my mood and my
Whatever
mindset.
moves you.
On the way down here, Mary Mary. I had to get my mind right.
Got the gospel.
I had to praise him.
Renee, what you
Nice.
listening to?
But see, what I'm listening to is books.
Audiobooks.
I'm listening to audiobooks.
All right.
That's
Okay.
what's on my playlist. So I'm listening to a biography, and I'm
Whose
listening.
biography?
It's on Miles Monroe. It's a major, and I listen to Freedom. I'm listening now to Freedom Summer that was given to me by someone, David Lawrence.
Okay, but when you have the music on, who were you grooving to?
When I have the music on, I guess I like old R&B music.
How old we going? We talking about like 60s,
70s,
70s?
80s.
Yeah, 70s, 80s.
I like that's a good
There's some
era.
good Miami,
yeah.
there's some good Miami soul music from that era.
Okay. Okay, so if this week, I would have to say I'm listening to the Carters, Jay-Z and Beyonce still, their new album. I've
All
been
right.
loving that. I'm listening to the new J. Cole a lot, the K.O.D.
Nice.
And I'm listening to FDF artists.
Okay.
All right,
Oh,
Yogi,
yeah.
right,
Nice,
Jid
okay.
and Little Ted.
Nice.
And I'm a big fan of bossa nova jazz music.
Really?
Yeah, I can't speak a word of Portuguese. But I gotta calm
Stuff has a
down.
cool
And when I
groove.
have
Yeah, that stuff has
in
a
that
cool
office
groove.
when it gets
Yeah.
hot, I can sing some passionate Portuguese.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm saying.
You got it. Really? Nice.
I don't know what it's all about. They can be saying a lot of
matter.
different stuff, but it makes
Yeah.
me feel good.
And
Yeah.
I forgot to say my gospel too. Man.
Of course, we all
Yeah.
got to
My
the gospel.
gospel.
Of course.
Yeah.
I just Mary yesterday. Yeah. Take the shackles off my feet so I can dance.
Love it. Well, you guys have been fabulous guests.
No,
I
thank
want to
you for
thank
having
you
us.
all again
Thank
for this
you.
Awesome.
Thank you
Yes.
for having us.
great
Thank you for having
conversation.
us.
For
Yeah.
the Felony Miami team, I'm your host, Joe Stone. Don't forget to check us out online, felonymiami.com. You can catch our show on Spotify, iTunes, any of your favorite RSS feeds. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Well, it's early in the morning. Then when I ride, Lordy Mama. Well, it's early in the morning. Then when I ride, well, it's early in the morning. But baby, when I ride, baby, you have it down here with me, my right side. Well,